Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and documentary purposes based on public federal court testimony and investigative reporting. Was Kid Cudi's car explosion just a freak accident or a message from someone at the top? Because according to sworn testimony from Diddy's ex-assistant, the music mogul once said, plain and clear, he wanted Kid Cudi gone. Not metaphorically, not as industry competition, but literally. And the worst part? That car did blow up in real life. And now everything Cassie said is starting to make horrifying sense. In a courtroom packed with tension, secrets, and the slow unraveling of one of hip-hop's most powerful empires, a new voice has stepped into the spotlight. And what she's saying doesn't just back up Cassie's claims, it might just rewrite the entire timeline of events. This is no longer a celebrity lawsuit. This is a dark puzzle finally being put together in public, piece by piece. When Kid Cudi's car exploded in his driveway in 2012, it was reported as an electrical malfunction. No suspects, no warning signs, and certainly no investigation. But now, over a decade later, the story is being dragged back into the spotlight, this time inside a federal courtroom. According to a recent testimony, Diddy once told his assistant that if Cassie didn't cut ties with Kid Cudi, he would blow up his car. Word for word. And what seemed like a ridiculous, over-the-top threat suddenly doesn't seem so far-fetched anymore. The assistant, under oath, described Diddy's rage as something more than possessive. It was calculated, vengeful, almost obsessive. She said he paced back and forth, repeating it like a man possessed. At the time, she thought it was just a burst of anger. But then the explosion happened. And she says she realized it wasn't just talk. Kid Cudi has never spoken publicly about the incident. But after the courtroom testimony surfaced, a member of his team quietly confirmed it to the New York Post. Yes, there was an explosion. Yes, the car was destroyed. And no, no one could ever explain how it happened. It was dismissed, forgotten, buried. But now it's Exhibit A. Who is the ex-assistant and why is she speaking now? She wasn't famous, she wasn't rich, she didn't have lawyers or PR agents. For years, she just disappeared. Until now, the woman testifying against Sean Combs was once an invisible figure in his empire. Hired as a personal assistant, she had access to his schedule, his travel, his calls, and his private outbursts. She claimed she stayed silent out of fear. Said she watched people get blacklisted overnight just for saying the wrong thing around him. But something changed. After Cassie filed her lawsuit, and after multiple women came forward with eerily similar stories, the assistant said she finally felt safe enough to speak. And what she's revealing goes deeper than anyone expected. She didn't just witness verbal abuse. She says she watched Diddy throw furniture, threaten staff, and control Cassie like a possession. She says there were rules for Cassie, who she could talk to, where she could go, what she could wear. Every time Cassie tried to push back, she claims something bad happened. And then came the threats about Kid Cudi. The assistant said she couldn't forget it, not just because it was extreme, but because of what happened next. An explosion. And silence. Now, years later, her testimony might be the key that unlocks a whole string of buried events. And it's already turning heads. Cassie Ventura met Sean Combs in 2005. She was 19, he was 36. What started as a music mentorship soon turned into something else, something darker. By 2008, she was appearing everywhere with him. Red carpets, parties, award shows. But behind the flash, Cassie later alleged, was a world of manipulation. Her lawsuit, filed in late 2023, claimed that Diddy used threats, surveillance, and even physical force to keep her under control. She wasn't just a girlfriend. She was property. The assistant echoed this, describing Cassie as a shell of herself during those years. She said there were times Cassie would disappear into hotel rooms for days, only to emerge in tears. And every time she tried to leave, something would happen. One of those times was around 2011. Cassie, desperate for freedom, began pulling away from Combs. That's when she reconnected with someone she'd met in the industry, Kid Cudi. According to multiple sources, it wasn't a full-blown relationship. But there was something there, a spark. And that was enough. Enough to trigger Diddy, enough to start the chain reaction. Kid Cudi was rising fast. Albums were charting. His fan base was loyal. He had a reputation for being raw, honest, and deeply emotional. So when word got back to Diddy that Cassie had been spending time with Cudi, he allegedly lost it. The assistant says Diddy believed Cassie was humiliating him. He couldn't control it. And in one of those fits of rage, he made the bomb threat. She remembers him saying, "If I ever see him near her again, I'll blow his fickin' car up." At the time, it seemed like celebrity drama, private jealousy, a toxic breakup. But after Cody's car did explode, everything changed. Even more chilling? This was during a time when Kid Cudi was struggling with serious mental health issues. He had just gone public about checking into rehab. He was vulnerable, isolated. And now we have to ask, was he also being targeted? The assistant says yes. And if that's true, this wasn't just a breakup gone wrong. It was a dangerous obsession that spilled into violence. And the silence around it? Deafening. This is where things start to feel less like a personal meltdown and more like a system. Because according to the ex-assistant, Diddy didn't act alone. She says there were people who heard the threats, who saw the bruises, who cleaned up after the chaos, and instead of speaking out, they stayed silent. Some because they were afraid. Others, she claims, because they were paid. Security guards who turned the other way. Personal drivers who altered logs. House managers who fixed damage before press ever arrived. Even stylists and choreographers who quietly warned each other, "Stay on his good side." There were whispers, always whispers, but no one ever shouted. And the assistant says that wasn't an accident. She claims there was an entire protection machine around Diddy, a network of handlers whose job was to preserve the image, no matter what happened behind closed doors. She mentions nights when she saw Cassie crying in a locked room. While outside, guests laughed at a party. She says some celebrities even knew. A-list names, people still on magazine covers today. They'd show up, see the energy, and leave early, she said. They knew something was wrong, but they never said anything. Why? Because Diddy wasn't just a man, he was a gatekeeper. And in Hollywood, gatekeepers are gods. But now those gods are being named in court filings, and they're scrambling. When Cassie filed her lawsuit in November 2023, the world stopped. It was explosive, alleging years of coercion, physical harm, trafficking, and surveillance. The documents painted a horrifying portrait of life behind Diddy's empire. And then, within just one day, it was gone. Settled. Quietly, privately. No details released. To the public, it felt like a dead end. But to those in the industry, it was a red flag. Because you don't drop millions in less than 24 hours unless the other side has receipts. Cassie's legal team said little, but that silence didn't stop others. Suddenly, other women began stepping forward. Former staff, former collaborators, even people who had signed NDAs decades ago began finding ways around them. And then came the ex-assistant. Her testimony, while not part of Cassie's original lawsuit, echoed the same details, the same timelines, the same threats. It gave Cassie's claims new weight and made the settlement look less like closure and more like containment. One legal expert said, "It's like putting a lid on a pot that's already boiling over." And now that pot is spilling into federal court. This trial isn't just a media circus, it's a minefield. Inside the federal courtroom, Diddy's legal team is doing everything they can to shut it down. They've filed motion after motion to suppress testimony, seal exhibits, and discredit witnesses. But the judge isn't having it. In one hearing, the judge reportedly said, "Silencing a witness because the truth is uncomfortable is not justice." Meanwhile, new subpoenas are being issued weekly. More witnesses, more documents, more recordings. Sources close to the case say there are dozens of unreleased voice memos, text messages, and security footage now being reviewed behind closed doors. And Diddy? He hasn't appeared in court yet. But his silence is loud. Rumors swirl that he's staying overseas, avoiding flights into U.S. jurisdictions. His lawyers deny this, but no one's seen him in public for weeks. The courtroom is becoming a battlefield of stories, each one more disturbing than the last. And every day, the judge hears another piece of a puzzle that no one wanted to solve. But it's not just the past that's on trial, it's the entire system. Diddy's name is the headline, but behind him stands an entire generation of artists, executives, and insiders who are watching this unfold in absolute panic. Already, fans have noticed big changes. A-listers unfollowing Diddy on social media, former collaborators scrubbing mentions, party footage mysteriously disappearing from YouTube and TikTok. The cleanup has started. Some say this is the Weinstein moment for the music world, where powerful men who thought they were untouchable are suddenly within reach of the law. Insiders whisper that other lawsuits are already being drafted, other assistants, other victims. Even a few industry veterans are reportedly cooperating with the feds, trading information in exchange for immunity. One name that keeps popping up? Not another rapper, but a record label CEO who, according to multiple sources, knew everything. Kid Cudi has remained silent, but sources say he's privately cooperating with investigators. He hasn't spoken publicly yet, but if he does, it could bring the entire house of cards crashing down. And this time, no one's getting out clean. This story started with a pop star and a lawsuit, but it's become something far bigger. A reckoning for an entire culture that worshipped power, protected secrets, and punished those who dared to speak. Diddy built an empire on music, image, and loyalty. But now, one of his most loyal insiders is breaking the silence. The question is no longer, did it happen? The question is, who else knew? And as the courtroom lights burn hotter, the cracks in the facade are turning into full-blown collapse. Because if this much truth can surface after just one assistant speaks up, imagine what's still hiding beneath the surface. The next chapter hasn't been written yet. But one thing's for sure, this story isn't over. It's just beginning.